So what?
Huh?
Exactly. Welcome to another episode of Pilots Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say. Today we have a special guest, Jared. If you're new to the show, then you know my name is Zach. If you're not, then you know that we like to talk about anything that's aviation related and maybe useful to anyone who's interested in becoming a pilot or are on their pilot journey already. So let's just kind of get started. I'll ask Jared to introduce himself a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jared Roberts, pilot right now at American Airlines. I'm a first officer. Started here at Thrust Flight in 2018 in the CFI Academy. So I went to another school before this, but I came up through Thrust Flight in the CFI Academy. Taught here as a CFI for about a year and a half, and got my 1500. Went to SkyWest Airlines as a first officer, upgraded to captain, then went to American. So the typical, very boring. I
Yeah.
got 1,500 hours. I went to a regional. I went to a major path. Very uninteresting.
I find that very interesting because, I think that's what people want to hear. We have a lot of instructors because, maybe that's the typical path, but a lot of people are like, something I'm finding interesting is how many people are still really like mystified about what the typical path would even be,
Right.
if you would consider that being what you did. So there may be some things to ask there. Like, for example, you said, did you start at SkyWest after you got your 1,500 hours?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So I went to a SkyWest pretty soon after my 1,500, starting throwing resumes out, like 12, 1,300 or something like that, a few months before. Went to SkyWest, and I got there right before COVID. So it was interesting first year and a half, 2 years experience. So
Oh,
flying
that was
empty airplanes. Yeah. So it was kind of crazy, but didn't get furloughed or anything. So I was one of the lucky ones,
okay.
even though that was a pretty quick furlough for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Not like one of the big ones in the past,
Okay.
um, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I started off.
Well, then, I'm curious about when you kind of started. I'll start there. When did you sort of start to navigate sending out resumes and doing interviews and things like that? Were you clear about where you wanted to go, or did you kind of just get what you could? And especially around the time, it was kind of a free for all. I feel like,
Yeah,
but
no,
yeah,
not at all. I was not clear where I wanted to go.
yeah,
I knew I wanted to go. I wanted to go to American.
uh-huh.
I'm because I live in Dallas, and my uncle flew for American for a long time, so I kind of grew up, with that being the goal.
Mhm.
But I had no idea how to get there. I didn't really have a path, like a clear cut path set
Mhm.
out in front of me. And I just kind of like started panicking because all my buddies that were flight instructing with me were like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Envoy. I'm in the cadet program. I'm
Yeah.
doing this and that and that." Like they all had their stuff together, and I'm like,
Okay.
"Oh, okay, yeah, let's let's get this going." So
Okay.
we had a SkyWest recruiter come in here
Mm.
and talk how we have we recruiters sometimes come in. And they made a pretty good pitch as SkyWest does.
Yeah.
So they do a pretty good sell job, and they're a good airline. But
Mhm.
he came in, he was talking about all the bases. They've got like a million bases, like I want to say like 18 or 19 bases or something crazy.
Absolutely.
It's insane, but they're all cool bases. It was like you can go to Palm Springs, you can go to LA, San Francisco, you can go to Boise. Like I was like, oh, these are cool places.
Yeah.
I would go to any one of those,
Yeah.
So I stayed in Dallas.
Yeah, yeah, right.
So,
That makes sense. But either way, they sounded attractive, and you went
yeah,
and check it out, and it gave you a little bit. That maybe that was the next step you needed to get the push to kind of find your first job, right? Or
yeah.
I
It
say
sounded
first
like
job, but yeah.
exactly. It sounded like a good deal, and they had a kind of partnerships with all the airlines, so
Hmm.
it wasn't like you were like stuck in one spot.
That was part one of my next questions. If
Yeah,
it like, is there? Because sometimes that's the case, right? Maybe some of the other regional airlines, you're kind of expected to fly with a certain larger airline, right?
right. Yeah.
So
So a lot of them are they have partnerships, or some of them are even wholly owned by the airline.
okay,
So
that's what I
like
was wondering.
yeah, like American owns like Envoy, PSA, and Piedmont.
Hmm.
So if you fly for any one of those airlines, you automatically go to American
Hmm.
once your kind of number comes up, your seniority number
Okay.
comes up.
Okay,
So
gotcha. Oh, that's is that a? It sounds like that's a double-edged sword. Like maybe some people want that, right? They kind of have a foot in the door for one of those airlines, but
yeah,
you still had your options open if you went with SkyWest, right?
right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think most people who want to go to like American, they would or Delta or United, they would go through one of the one of the wholly owns or one of the partners that
Hmm.
has a flow or a program to get them there.
Right.
And that for like a really long time was a really good way to get there.
Hmm.
And then after COVID, it got crazy with the hiring, as you guys saw.
Yeah.
It just kind of like it was like this revenge hiring or whatever they called it.
Yeah, it was like a lot going on, right?
Yeah. So then it was almost like it kind of held people back a little bit. It was
Mhm.
like, oh, you can actually get there faster without being through one of these programs. So I mean,
Mhm.
now it's kind of died down a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's always a cyclical thing. You know, it's always changing.
I hear that a lot. It's cyclical, and I
Mhm.
don't know if were there concerns in the school about like whether or not people were going to be able to get hired when they wanted to get hired, especially around the time you were in school here for at Thrustlight.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's when the I mean, it was pre-COVID, so it was the hiring was busy.
yeah,
There was a
okay.
lot of hiring going on. You could pretty much just get an interview
Hmm.
at most of the major regionals. So
Yeah.
I interviewed with 3 different regionals, and I ended up choosing SkyWest. But
Hmm.
that was not there was not much worry about getting hired back then.
Hmm. I'm
Um,
not at that moment, anyways.
right, and then
Yeah.
COVID happened, and it was like, oh my god, it's all over. We're never going to get hired again. And then
Mhm.
a few months later, it's like off to the races again. So
Yeah.
you never know. It's always changing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, gotcha. So, and I don't really know what the current status is. It seems like it maybe it's fluctuating, right? Let's say someone's like, oh, it's not as they're not hiring as fast as they were before. What would you say to someone who is thinking that? 'Cause I'm curious. I don't really.
Yeah, I would just
Yeah.
say that it's temporary.
Yeah.
It's a temporary downturn.
Okay.
Right now, and it's COVID was one thing.
Yeah.
This is a different thing. So that right now it's um, kind of like a change in like a lot of parts of the industry, like the low cost carrier
Mm.
kind of model, like Spirit, Frontier,
Yeah.
those type of airlines. Um, it seems like they kind of have like thin margins, and they're having kind of trouble
Yeah.
bouncing back
Hmm.
with how prices are, and how everything is right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
but also there's a lot of shortages from the manufacturers, like can't get airplanes. Like
Hmm.
Airbus, Boeing, if they're not making airplanes, there's problems with some of the engines.
Hmm.
That's one of the things Spirit ran into. So
Yeah.
right now, it's more of like a supply issue on a
Mm.
resource side for the airplanes more than the pilots. So
Right.
it's a little different problem right now.
Right.
But
Gotcha.
I think it's temporary too. So
Yeah, I mean, from my own perception, it's like those sorts of things in an industry tend to work themselves out one way or another, right? And when they do, then there's going to be another demand for
right,
more pilots. So that's kind of like something that I would imagine is going on. It's
yeah,
not like we're not going to figure some things out. I mean, the airline industry is, um, I mean, it's so important. It seems like that we're always going to figure a way to make it work.
yeah.
Um,
People always need to fly,
yeah,
So it's
exactly.
not that's not going to go away. People aren't going to stop needing to travel or needing to go places for family, business, whatever it is, and
Yeah.
it'll bounce back. So
So you made your way. You moved on from SkyWest. Was there any? What kind of went into that process? Moving on to one of the more major airlines.
yeah, I was at SkyWest for about 4.5 years.
Okay.
So 2022, I guess, is when I started being kind of competitive. I upgraded the year before,
Hmm.
and what they were really looking for at the time was turbine PIC,
Hmm.
which is kind of like always the gold standard for what major airlines want to hire with,
Uh huh.
or they want what experience they want pilots to have that they hire.
Okay, and just maybe for me and some of the viewers,
Yeah.
what do you mean by that? What
So,
is turbine
yeah, sorry.
PIC? No, you're
So
fine.
turbine, so like a jet,
Uh huh.
like a jet engine, and then PIC is pilot and command time, so
Oh, okay.
captain time.
I could
Um,
have got that one. I could have got that one.
no, no,
But yeah,
sorry, the acronyms, man, they'll kill you.
yeah.
So there's SIC and PIC. So SIC would be like a first officer, second in command,
Uh huh.
and then there's PIC, which is the pilot in command, which is the captain.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, awesome.
So once you get that, and you're in a jet, and they know you're flying passengers, doing that kind of operation, you're like in command of a ship, right? So
Mm.
it's they take that experience, for what it's worth, which is a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. I mean, we've done some videos in the past couple months about some of the processes of getting your career started, and that's something I've been interested in asking someone about.
Uh-huh.
There's so many different ways to move into one of the more major airlines, if someone desires to do so after going to like somewhere like SkyWest or Envoy. Do people typically become a second officer and then a first officer? I'm sorry, a first officer and then a captain at a regional airline before moving on to one of the more major airlines?
Yeah, that's kind of the traditional
Yeah.
method of moving on.
Hmm.
Is you would do your time as a first officer until you got your what you need is 1,000 turbine time
Okay.
to be eligible to be a captain.
Hmm.
So once they get that, if depending on how things are going, right, they would upgrade immediately or when they're ready or whatever it is,
Right.
or maybe they're overstaffed and they don't need they don't need captains yet, so they just hang out there in the right seat for a little while longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the typical, more traditional way to get out of one of the smaller airlines into a bigger airline. But it's not to say that that's the only way. There's a lot of people that go right seat to right seat and just jump on board a major airline from as a first officer, so FO to FO. And
that's what I was wondering too, if that's a thing.
Yeah. And then there was also kind of like people jumping from like a SkyWest or an Envoy to like a Spirit or a Southwest, and then moving on. So going kind of like a middle, a stepping stone kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you're a captain at something like Envoy or SkyWest, even do those people typically still become maybe a first officer at a different airline?
The thing is, you always start at the bottom of a list.
Okay,
so you start at the bottom of a seniority list, which means you're going to be a first officer,
regardless
of anything that has a two-pilot operation. So
okay.
You're going to start at the bottom. You're a first officer again, and then you can move back up, and it's all seniority based. So right now I'm still, more than a couple of years away from upgrading again, if that's what I want to do right away. So.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Because one thing I've been trying to figure out is about the pacing in general. And I think there's a lot of different talks about it. What I like about in general aviation, something I've learned since I've been here, is how quickly you can get your career started. But I'm always that I feel like I've got a good grasp on. I can sit there and talk to someone about that. I was actually telling my friend yesterday. But once you get your career started, I'm wondering about that pacing, because some people move really fast and some people like to take their time. Yeah. But regardless, you've started working. Do you have anything to say, I guess, about anyone who may be wanting to like move really, really fast, or someone who's concerned about something like that?
I know, yeah, that's like always the question. What's the secret sauce to move on?
Yeah, and maybe there's not a secret sauce, but and maybe there's like more of a different way to look at it. I'm just curious though.
It's all dependent on there's a ton of different factors. I was very lucky. I got on at one of the biggest hiring sprees we've ever seen in the airlines. So I mean, I was super lucky. I'm super blessed that I was able to jump onto a regional, only work there for 4.5 years, and then go to a legacy. That's something I never thought would happen a few years ago. So there's not really much you can do about once you're at an airline like a regional airline. There's not a ton you can do to speed up that process. You kind of fly what you get, and you get your hours as they come. You can fly more, if you're able to pick up things up to your up to the legal limits, right? So if you don't wear yourself out, but it's depends on your work-life balance. Depends on a lot of things, but one thing I would recommend is kind of diversifying your resume a little bit, because everybody looks the same on paper, right? It's like, here's a 1,500-hour CFI who went to a regional and became a captain, and here they're asking to be a pilot at American Airlines, United, Delta, whatever. Is getting some different experience in there, maybe some like leadership experience, becoming a check airman, things like that. So that's something that makes you stand out.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. And it sounds that sounds to be expected, I guess. But you're saying that that's one thing you would at least consider.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I might want to get into some sticky questions. Like I say sticky. One thing I'm curious about, everyone usually takes out a pretty big loan to if they have the desire to become an airline pilot.
Sure.
And that's usually I don't know. I guess for me, I'd be thinking that's one of the most major parts of the decision of wanting to begin this career. In hindsight, is that something that was totally worth the risk? I've taken on, however you went about getting your training.
Yeah. So I did not take out a big loan. I took out small loans as I went. And I finished with 0 debt, which is awesome. But wow. I also missed out on a lot of time that I could have already been there. Right. So I recommend, and with how things are now with the market, and it's going to bounce right back, the hiring is going to come back. There's so many retirements. There's so much flying right now. I would recommend to anybody to do an accelerated program and just go through it, because I mean, you spend say $100,000 or something on your flight training, go to a regional, and some of those sign-on bonuses are literally the price of your training. You pay it back the first day you're there. You know what I mean? So
and that's what I was wondering
right now. Yeah. So in hindsight, I wish that I would have maybe done it that way, right? But who would have known that it would be this way? You can't really bank on taking out a big, 6-figure loan and then having that money right off the bat when you start. But it's kind of the reality of how it is right now. So
then that makes me wonder, can you talk to me a little bit more about your training journey then? I know you got involved with thrust at some point, right?
Yeah.
I just don't know when exactly.
Yeah. So so I started my private pilot training in 2010.
Okay.
And I was up in a flight school in Denton. I basically took out a loan. I want to say it was 20 or something like that, 20,000. Went through private, and I got through private pretty quick, and I had a little money left over, so I started instrument right after that. I got about halfway through instrument, I ran out of money. So I kept taking out a loan. With the school I had, didn't have a ton of partnerships with like lenders or whatever, but they had one that they accepted, and it was kind of like a big interest rate, and they only gave you little amounts of money, so I just took out as much as I could afford, went through a certificate, finished, took a couple years off or whatever, how much time I needed to build back that money, and then started again. So I did that through commercial training
and grind it out. I actually think that's pretty cool because I don't get to hear a lot of that. Again, like you said, there's different ways to approach it, but I've been wondering. I haven't talked to many people who. I'm talking to a lot of people who are going to Part 141 school, like thrust or something. And was that a Part 141 school that you were involved in?
It was, yeah. They didn't have a
accelerator.
It kind of was. I mean, 141 can be accelerated, I feel like, because at most places, because they usually have more resources, more planes, more instructors, so they have the capacity to take you on and say fly as much as you want, finish as quick as you can. But they didn't really specialize in accelerated training like we do. They didn't have like that like a kind of a 0 to hero program like we have, right? Like we've got ZTA, ATP flight schools got kind of like a similar thing. There's a bunch of flight schools that kind of do things like that, right? But they didn't have something where you just plop all your money down and shoot through it.
Okay.
Plus, I didn't really have the means to do that. I couldn't take off personally from all my personal life and my work and everything like that I needed to do to fund this. That just wasn't where I was at in life. So that was kind of, my path is a little bit different. But
absolutely, and I'm finding that interesting. First of all, I'm finding how interesting it is how different people's paths tend to be and the solutions they come up with to be able to go through flight training. But not I don't know about the statistics and the percentages at Thrust, but a lot of our students aren't just young people who are living at home.
Right.
It's people who are changing careers and things like that. And sometimes they find their way, or maybe they have a significant other, or they just find a creative solution to say,
right,
I'm gonna go to the school. I'm going to the school because first of all, it's gonna get me through fast enough so that I don't have to take as much time off work and I can get to working sooner. But the solutions they come up with is interesting, is what I'm trying to get at. And for you, I mean, it sounds like were you doing something before?
No,
taking
not
that
really.
plunge? Okay, you said not
I was
really.
bartending. That's how I funded flight school, which is people tipping me for making them drinks.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
grind it out.
So yeah, it worked out. But I think it's really cool that people get creative and they're that flexible that they can like take like a career change person, right? They just stop what they're doing. They go full time into flight training, and breakfast, lunch, and dinner flight training. It's insane that they just that they can make that change.
And I've worked a lot of different jobs where I'm doing. I've worked at a lot of restaurants actually too, and then I've done a lot of freelance work because I'm a videographer and things. And I started working here with Thrust, and now I do a lot of work with Thrust. And then I'm here like all the time now. So but I always wanted to hear someone who said they just wanted to, like, they took a different route and they didn't do the full on let's try to get this done in 7 months kind of thought process. So when you became involved with Thrust, was it as a CFI?
I was a commercial pilot training to be a CFI. So I came here, I shopped around flight schools for where I wanted to do my CFI training at. And Thrust had a really good academy that was kind of just starting. And I liked the school, I liked the people, and it was kind of a really just welcoming kind of family feel flight school. And they had this really cool academy with this the guy who started our academy. Super smart guy, and I really still look up to him, still keep in touch with him, and I thought it was a good fit, and it was awesome. Like, I wouldn't have changed it at all.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, then that makes this question more interesting for me. So you've been bartending to get your way. through your ratings,
Yeah.
and then it's time to maybe get your first maybe paying job as a with your certificates,
Mhm.
and that's probably looks like it's going to be through. Did you know when you went to the CFI Academy that you were going to end up becoming a CFI with Thrust?
No, I didn't know. Yeah, I mean, I had to
Yeah.
get my CFI first to be eligible to like interview, right?
Yeah.
So, that's what I wanted to do,
Okay.
and I was kind of trying to, forge those relationships and stuff like that. But,
Yeah. I'm
no,
just
it was still up in the air at the time.
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
So what I'm getting at, I guess, is it has to be kind of an exciting time.
yeah.
I mean, it's been a slow roll probably to kind of get to that point. What was kind of going on in your head? Like, was there any? I guess for me, like that's kind of feels like a big change too.
Yeah.
You're starting something big. Was there any fear there? I mean, was there anything that was kind of going in your mind? What went into that thought process and that decision making?
Not so much fear, more just I don't know, maybe uncertainty
Hmm.
because I bartended for like 10 years,
Yeah.
So I knew what the money was. I knew how to make more money if I needed to.
Hmm.
I never had a job as a pilot, right?
Right.
So, but it was I was more excited than anything. I mean,
That's
I
awesome.
thought it was so cool that I was going to be flying to make money,
Yeah.
instead of just like for school.
Yeah, to pay for it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of
So,
flip the switch on them.
yeah.
So I mean, you had to be a little excited, but how long? How did it go working as a CFI at Thrust? Because eventually you did, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I finished the academy, earned my certificate, and I think I interviewed like the next day or 2 days after, something like that,
Mhm.
and pretty much hired me on the spot. I jumped in a few days later or whatever. So
Yeah.
it was really cool, and it happened really fast. And it was the first day was like a whirlwind. I remember like flying. All my training was like I would do one flight, right, like a 2-hour block or whatever,
Hmm.
do some maneuvers, whatever, cross country, come back, and then I'd go home and then go to work.
Yeah.
And then first day working as a CFI thrust flight, I flew like almost up to the 8 hours. I was like, oh my god, like, this is the most I've ever flown in my life.
Yeah.
And one
Exactly.
day I was like holding on to the tail of the airplane at the end, like trying to keep up.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then
But
I'm sure you adjusted, but
yeah, yeah, you adjust. Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's a lot of fun though. But yeah, it was a big transition for sure.
So I mean, and maybe I don't know how much you like to talk about it, but how long did you last as a bartender after you started working as a CFI?
Oh man, I tried to do both for a little while. It
Yeah.
was a little rough. So
A
I
little
was
ambitious there, probably.
yeah, I was like, I don't want to let this money go because it was pretty good money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I did both for maybe 3 months, and then I was
Wow.
just like, I'm dead. I got to stop this.
That is
I would
way
go,
longer than I would have thought.
yeah, I would
Yeah.
literally like work from here, 9 to 5 or whatever it is, and then I'd go into work there, 6, 7 p.m. or whatever till 12, 1, something like that, and do it
Yeah.
again the next day. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I lasted only a couple months doing that, but
Yeah. I'm sure by the time you saw the pace at which you were going,
yeah,
as a CFI and flying so much, I'm
right.
sure you're just kind of like, well,
It was enough.
one foot in, one foot out. You just wanted to kind of go ahead and
Right,
start the
and it,
journey.
and it ended up being plenty.
Yeah,
Once
yeah,
I got my student load built up and stuff like that,
yeah,
started getting me more flying. It was totally fine. So,
yeah, yeah.
and I didn't have to kill myself to do it. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's pretty brutal.
Well, was there so at Thrust was there any part of the training that you kind of began to specialize in or take more of a role in? I mean, I think you ended up becoming. Did you become an assistant chief or anything like that? I don't remember.
So I was not until I came back.
Oh, okay.
So I was regular line instructor. I became a stage checker.
Hmm.
And I did that until I left the regionals, and then I came back and was mostly this was kind of during COVID when everything started slowing down. I wasn't flying a ton at SkyWest,
Okay.
and I really liked teaching the CFI Academy, so I came back
Okay.
with some of my buddies that you had on before too, with Bill and
Yeah.
some of those guys,
Awesome.
and started teaching the CFI Academy kind of part time whenever they had it. So
Hmm.
I did that, and then I was flying a little bit, and then the opportunity came up to take the chief pilot position, chief flight instructor position. So that's what I did like 2 years ago, a
Hmm.
little over 2 years ago. So
Okay.
that's where we're at now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, and then you go on your journey, and now you said you flew you've flown at SkyWest for how long has it been actually now? Since I didn't write down the math. When did you begin flying for one of the airlines? What,
So that would have been 2019.
2019.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it was August 2019.
Okay, gotcha. So would you? I mean, it's safe to say you have about 5, almost 6 years in the airlines now.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, and you're staying in Dallas. Is there anything that's kind of next for you in terms of like, oh, I kind of have my eyes on moving to a different like city or anything like that? Is there anything like that?
Maybe eventually.
Yeah.
Right now I'm just happy to be where I am and just
Yeah.
relaxing, man. I mean, it's been such a
Yeah.
kind of a grind to get here. Not that it was, a lot of people go through a lot more than I did, but
Yeah. Well, you worked hard.
I was hustling,
Yeah.
and I'm just happy to be where I'm at now and just kind of trying to take it easy and just enjoy it. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at now.
All right. Well, then to give, I was talking about earlier how what I'm liking that I've been able to do on this podcast is demystifying some of what it's like to be an airline pilot. Can you talk to me a little bit like about what a day in the life of when you are booked to fly? I
Yeah.
don't know what the term is there. Maybe you can correct that. Booked to fly, but yeah.
Booked to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm booked to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if it's like, so typically we do, anywhere from 1 to 4 day trips. I usually get 3 to 4 day trips is what I go for. Makes it worth it to go to the airport.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to drive there every day.
Yeah.
So all, it's pretty much starts the night before. I get all packed up. Get all my stuff together. You got a bunch of stuff you got to update in your electronic flight bag, your iPad.
Yeah.
So you got to update all your charts, get all your your company documents together if you got to update those or whatever it is. Once you get all that stuff all squared away, pack it up, and then I just try to leave nothing in the morning except shower and go kind of thing. So I'll do that, get ready, run out the door. Takes me about 45 minutes to get to the airport. Go to the employee lot, yay. Take a shuttle to the airport, go through security, walk to my airplane, go meet the captain. I usually buy 2 coffees, get some brownie points.
Okay. That's awesome.
One for me and one for him if he wants it. If not, we'll give it one of the flight attendants. But that's how I like to start the trip. And
cool.
Then we meet each other, we brief, we set the airplane up, and we get going. So it's that's the start of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fly a leg to 1, 2, 3, 4 legs sometimes. My preference is 1 leg.
Yeah.
And do 1 flight and go to the
some
hotel.
Some people want to do it all at once kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, 1 leg for the day kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good day, man.
Yeah.
Just 1 flight, go there, go to the hotel. I'm done, kick back. So
yeah, exactly.
That's my kind of day.
Do you typically have like another leg back, or is it something like a flight back? Like you usually have to fly back, right?
Yeah, there's usually, so it's it depends. There's a lot of at the regional level, it was a lot of back and forth. So you'd kind of do like a hub out and then back to your hub, because it's regional, right? So like you're in Dallas, Fort Worth, and then there's all these little airports around you, like Waco, Tyler, all those little airports that we fly from Thrust Flight.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I've been to all these before.
Yeah, awesome. That makes sense.
Yep. So you go there and back, there and back, there and back a bunch, and then you actually end at like one of them. For the day or whatever. But at the major airlines, you usually go. Sometimes you do stuff that's not too far away, but usually you're bouncing more around the country. You get around a little more, so that's kind of fun to see.
Yeah, awesome. And if it lasts about 3 or 4 days, is that because you're going to be bouncing around to other places and then coming back home?
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes you come back to your base one of the days or not. Sometimes you leave you leave DFW and then you go all over the place and you bounce to some of the other hubs. Usually you'll connect, you'll do some of the flying for the other hubs too. So you'll kind of like this last trip I went from DFW to Eugene, Oregon, and then the second day I came to Phoenix. So that's another base, but I wasn't at my base, right?
Yeah.
But I was bouncing around for them, right? So Eugene to Phoenix, and then I went to Omaha, and then Phoenix, and then St. Louis, and then came back to Dallas on the last day. So I didn't see Dallas again until the last day. So it's always different, but yeah, that's kind of like a sample.
Okay, and I know that, and that's the point of it. I guess it's never the same. And I think a lot of people who become or are in our program that I've talked to and are working on becoming airline pilots, and then the airline pilots I've talked to, everyone has this similar aspect of like it's almost like the same notion that people don't want to work a 9 to 5 or something like that. Hey, this is a little more exciting.
Yeah.
And there's things about it, right, that can be like kind of rinse and repeat, sure. But you're moving around, you're talking to people, and you're seeing new places.
Right.
And it seems like those are kind of some of the benefits there. Can you kind of talk about what some of the benefits that you're enjoying now? People always have an expectation, but you're there. You worked your way to get here,
Yeah.
right? I'm curious about what are some of those things that like are like, I love this part about my job.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
kind of like you said, I think every day is a little bit different. You know,
yeah,
I don't go to an office and sit in the same place and then go home every day. It's like it's always different. I mean, yes, I'm in my office in the cockpit
yeah,
and I'm always there, but
yeah.
we're going other places. There's different things to see, different people to meet, different cities to see.
Hmm.
So the variety is it really appeals to me, and you get caught up in the grind a lot, you know, where
Yeah,
it's just like, oh, we're working, we're tired, whatever it is, but you know, you got to I try to take time, you know, at least once a day to look out the window and be like, man, I'm up here. Yeah, you
exactly.
got to remember what you're doing. You know, it's almost like you take it for granted. So,
Yeah, it could be
um,
easily to take it for. I would imagine it could be easy to take it for granted. Because anything can become repetitive.
yeah,
At some point when we become more experienced too. Uh, but not taking it for granted seems to be the key there to kind of keep it fun.
yeah, absolutely.
Because you're already there, and even like when you said, "Hey, I'm buy maybe 2 coffees," and someone's gonna have it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure. Like, is there times when you don't buy the coffees, or do you almost always buy the extra coffee?
I like to get the extra coffee. If I'm getting one, I'm just gonna get two.
Yeah.
It's put a little karma, a little a little bit in the karma bank for the
Yeah.
trip.
I do. Well, I guess the reason is because you say, "Oh, get some brownie points," but I see it like I feel like it's easily a way of being proactive about kind of connecting and sharing with people,
Yeah,
and just making sure you're giving something. I don't know. It's kind of like that sounds really simple, but
right.
I don't want to. You kind of just said it real casual, but in my mind, if I'm doing that every day, I'm thinking about other people every day.
Yeah,
So that kind of behavior is I feel like connects to the idea of hey, looking out the window and saying I'm flying.
yeah,
So
for sure. And I mean, for me, it's kind of almost like habitual now too.
yeah.
As typically the captains will do that. You know, if they're getting one, a lot of times they'll offer, you know, first officer or the flight attendants or whatever if they
Yeah.
want something. So you know, coming from doing that, it's just like it's just natural. I don't even think about it. You know,
Yeah, that's really
hey,
cool.
you guys want this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I mean, I think we've gone on like onto a lot of topics. I feel like I could just sit here and ask you so many more questions though. So what I'll do then is, I mean, I kind of touched on all these things. Maybe just for funsies at the end, I can ask for some tips for some students who are navigating their way through flight training, and then maybe some tips for students who are beginning their career as a pilot. Maybe you could from your own. You said it earlier. Maybe it's a little repetitive, but is there any tips for students that are on their way through flight training right now?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's you know, especially here, the one of the best things about some of the culture at Thrust Flight
Mhm.
is that people hang out here and they kind of study together and they get it's almost like a university type vibe, you know, like you
Mm.
get to know everybody, you study together, even might be your roommates or whatever.
Yeah.
So working together, it's such a huge difference from trying to do it alone.
Yeah.
You know, sitting down and I know sometimes you got to sit down and grind some stuff out when you're studying, and there's a couple subjects you might just be like, I got to sit down and figure this out. You know, put on some headphones and get some coffee or whatever and just like figure it out. But for the most part, if you got 5 or 6 people in a room all studying together, I mean, you're going to answer those questions a lot quicker if you just can bounce ideas off each other and
Hmm.
put your heads together.
Hmm.
Plus, the benefit here is, you know, there's people at all different certificate levels, so
Yes.
they've already gone through a lot of that stuff, right? Or maybe you've already gone through that stuff and you can help them out. Um, so not doing it alone is a big tip, I think.
And
Is
that's coming from
just
someone.
reaching out.
Do you feel like you kind of did it more alone than what the students are here are doing?
Up until I was in the CFI Academy,
Yeah.
that was my MO. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just like, I mean, my school wasn't like Thrust Flight is. It wasn't like you go there and hang out and study and talk to people. It was
Yeah.
like you go there, you fly, you go home,
Yeah.
and figure it out, right? And I could
Exactly.
I could ask my instructor questions, which my instructors were always cool,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like that community, you know, kind of culture.
Hmm. And I guess I just asked that to give reference for that tip. That's coming from someone who's maybe did a little bit different than what you're saying. So
Yeah, I've seen
yeah.
it both ways, and I didn't really get that experience until I was in the academy, and then
Yeah.
I made and a lot of those guys from that first academy are still my buddies today. So
Yeah.
I mean, we still connect and
Yeah.
we talk and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. But yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest tips I'd say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then for maybe someone who is getting closer to the 1,500 hours in hindsight, or maybe from seeing people join in on the airlines, is there any advice you may think there would be to give there?
For people that are almost 1,500 trying to get to the airlines, yeah, just keep your head up.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna come right back.
Yeah.
There's it's not always like amazing hiring like we've seen. I mean, it's kind of like it was so good that now it looks like it's bad, but it's really not. It's normal, right now. So we've just kind of come back to earth a little bit with the hiring spree.
Okay.
It's like they're still hiring. I know American and maybe a couple of the airlines are starting hiring literally next month again. So, but it's going to come back. So if you got your hours, keep your head up, keep doing the best you can, and build that resume. So.
Yeah, with that resume. Is there any resume tricks? I say that to say like resumes can be important. So
yeah, have somebody look at it for sure. Yeah, that's one of the things you don't want to do alone is your resume, and just look at it and say, I think that's really good, and then send it out without having somebody review it. Yeah. So having somebody look at it, and like I said, I mean, diversifying it. Having some different types of experience on there, and even at the CFI level, you have opportunities to kind of build some of that experience. You can become a stage checker, you can become an assistant chief, you can become the safety officer. We have almost a lot of the jobs we have here at Thrust Flight are kind of modeled after the airlines. So they really like seeing stuff like that and speaking from an experience that will translate and some of those transferable skills. Seeing that on the resume is a big plus for you. So okay, that's what I have about resume.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just like to ask that question because I feel like that's always a difficult one. At least it was for me in any other situation. I'm like, I hate looking at this piece of paper.
I know. I hate resumes, dude. It's so dumb. It's like, here's me on a piece of paper, but not really me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
it's some things I've done.
I mean, I get the purpose of it, but it's just like it just feels so like never good. Like it's like this isn't realistic to me on the end of trying to represent myself.
I know. It's just a label to get you in the door so you can actually talk to somebody.
Yeah, right? I hear you got to play the game to beat the game. So either way, it is what it is. Just the way it works. Well, I mean, we touched on everything that I think I would have liked to have. Of course, I could talk all day if we had all day, but I don't. I doubt you do. Is there anything you think you would want to add, like things that you don't hear talked about that you realize is kind of a big deal in what you're doing already? I know that's a super broad question, but I like to ask that question because I don't have the foresight, but you might have the hindsight. So is there anything that would you're like, oh, I didn't think about this before I got here?
I would say just from just another tip for students. Just one thing that I see a lot is not understanding how many resources they really do have. You get here, and especially when you get to Thrust Flight, it's kind of overwhelming, right? It's like, here's a big school, there's a million people everywhere, there's a huge fleet of planes. They just gave me a big bag with all these books in it. I don't know where to start. I don't know what I'm doing yet. And we walk you through that, right? But it's still overwhelming. So kind of breaking it down into smaller, manageable like chunks of saying, okay, this is my ACS. This is what this is the checklist the examiner is going to use for my check ride. Okay, I know what that is now. Let's set that aside and work up to that later, right? Now here's the books that kind of give me the background for what I need to study. So I've got my pilot flying handbook. I've got my pilot handbook of aeronautical knowledge, whichever certificate you're at. Here's my instrument flying handbook. Now I know what these are. This one's for maneuvers. This one's for technical subjects. Okay, now I know what to study when I come up to that, right? But not saying I got to read these cover to cover. It's more like these are resources for you, right? So you can kind of a la carte your studying, right? If I'm looking for regulations, I'm going to open up my big FAR-AIM Bible, right? And open that up. Seeing that is it's kind of intimidating, right? But no one's going to open up the FAR-AIM and read it cover to cover, man. Right. So don't worry about how big these books look and how overwhelming this whole situation looks like.
Just knowing what your resources are.
Yeah. And your flight instructors are a great resource to find out what your resources are, but they've gone through it before, so have your fellow students. So when you feel like you're kind of in the weeds and you're drowning a little bit, take a step back and ask for some help and reach out. And we've got program managers and assistant chiefs and team leads and all kinds of resources that help our students out. So everybody's really set up for success if they just help themselves a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a lot of proactivity, and for me, I'm like someone who needs to understand kind of like you said, the resources and the structure of things, so that I know how to participate. And it sounds like that's kind of part of what you're saying. Yeah. But hey, just know what's going on, know the environment, plug in a little bit, don't just sign up.
Yeah.
Be a
You
part
get a
of
lot
it.
of it by osmosis. Like, it's like
Yes.
just being here helps you soak it in, you know?
Yes.
So it's cool that we have that kind of community and that culture, that people can come here and hang out and get stuff that way. Cause I didn't have that, for most of my training.
Yes.
And it would have been awesome just to say, hey, I'm going to go hang out at the flight school and sit on the couch in the hangar for a while.
And that's
And
considered
I don't
productive.
even know what I'm going to learn. People are just going to walk by and and it's maybe I'm studying a little bit. Maybe I don't feel like studying. I just want to hang out. Probably still going to learn something. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
someone may ask you, "Hey, can you go over these cards with me? These these flashcards or whatever."
Yeah, or just hearing a conversation, right? You're just like, oh man, I didn't even know that was a thing, right?
Plugging in, and I guess we'll end with some of that, because for me, that's been one of the big turnoffs about, like, even going to college and things like that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know how to participate in that.
Right.
But even when I was younger, just knowing that participating is like really what it's going to take to help get you through.
Mm-hmm.
If I would have understood that, uh, then maybe I would have benefited a little bit more myself in some of those situations. And
Yeah, me too.
thrust flight, yeah. So I think in thrust flight, you saying that is really a big deal for someone to understand.
Yeah.
Hey, if you plug in, you really can overcome a lot of that overwhelm.
Right.
And I think that's been a very common denominator in a lot of these conversations I've been having with people. So it's
Yeah.
nice to hear from someone who's gone through their own journey and is now working in the airlines and is enjoying it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess we'll end on that note. I do appreciate you coming through.
Yeah. Thanks for having me out, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe we'll have to do it again someday. Maybe we'll talk beforehand and see if there's something we really want to go over and do a deep dive on, because
Yeah.
I think those deep dives are really what we find interesting. But hey, we got to know you.
Yeah.
I think people deserve to hear from Jared a little bit, so I appreciate you coming through. If you guys did enjoy this episode, you're still listening, whether it be on streaming platforms or YouTube, rate us, like us, comment, whatever, subscribe would be super helpful so that more people can hear what we're talking about, more aspiring pilots and people training or people who are just in their career already. But if you are listening, we look forward to seeing you next week on another episode of Pilots Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say. Thank you guys for joining in.